And to get this carburetor out of here, you actually have to pull the engine out of the cage. No, I don't need that wrench. Okay, another project for our precious little Harbor Freight trash pump. We're going to be changing out the carburetor because what happened was, you guys can see inside that air filter, the air filter got damp just from humidity and imploded. And when it did, it sucked a bunch of air down inside the carburetor and plugged it up. And these carburetors, honestly, aren't even worth trying to repair, to clean, because they're like, I think this kit was $10. So you don't even need to bother trying to clean it. You just get a new one. So I've got the new carburetor kit. I think I just bought it off of Amazon maybe, which interestingly enough, the carburetor kit was no problem, but I could not readily find the air filter.
Hey,
I still gotta go look and see if I can just go. It might be just something that a local, auto parts store has, hopefully.
Hey, Daddy, inside those puppies right here.
Inside there's puppies?
Yeah, right here.
Poppies. Poppies?
Yeah, when you turn it over the poppies.
Take all that mess off from our air breather and cover. And to get this carburetor out of here, you actually have to pull the engine out of the cage. Yeah, there's all sorts of nasties down inside there. I'm trying to remember if this is the pump that gets hydro-locked too. If it is,
yeah,
then that'd make even more sense that maybe the carburetor's already a little messed up. No, I don't need that wrench. So to get the pump and motor off the cage, that's just 6 bolts. We've done that before. I believe it's a 10mm or no? Oh, it is. So I got me a little stick. Let's see if this works as a plug. These this gas line is not easy to get to. Needle nose pliers. It seems like it should be an easy spot to get to, but just the shape of everything down in there, it's difficult. Got those on it. Wow, that was actually surprisingly successful. I don't think it dripped at all. I managed to keep the hose crimped with the needle nose pliers while I got the plug stuck in it. It didn't drip at all. You can see the gasoline starting to saturate the plug a little bit, but it didn't drip. Now to pull the carburetor off, it should be pretty much just a straight, take these 2 bolts out and pull it out, but there's at least 1 throttle linkage that's gonna have to come loose. 2, that's right. Now I believe, I've done this before. I think what I do is typically, that's gonna be an 8 or a 10. Boy, it feels like a 10. It just seems smaller than that, but. Well, that ran it right off there. You should be able to pull the carburetor out a little bit to pull that. First we'll take this shield off. That's just a plastic housing that covers the carburetor. Has your stickers and whatnot on it. And then the carburetor itself should also, I believe, just slide right out. And as it does, remember your seals. So there's this front seal here. Lay your seals out in reverse order so you get them back in the right way. Now here's our two linkages. The carburetor sits on a stud. You got this really sensitive wire spring. This thing always gives me trouble. To try to take it loose without permanently bending it the wrong way. Okay, that's off. And this other one I think is, it's basically just vertical. There you go. Yep, it's just a vertical hook. So you take those two linkages loose, the whole carburetor slides out. There's another seal on the back of it. Whoopsie, there's the gasoline. I got the carb bowl still full. So another linkage just on the back, or another seal on the back. I think that's all. So let's get this other carburetor out and get a look at it and see how we want to go about putting it on. So here's our new carburetor, fresh out of the package. It comes with a whole bunch of stuff actually, look at that. Comes with new fuel line. I'm gonna lay all this stuff out on the back side. Our gas plug here is saturated now and still trying to drip. Comes with the new carburetor assembly itself, fully assembled. And it comes with the gaskets. Now I notice it doesn't have that big rubber gasket, that first one that I took off the front. This kit doesn't have that, but it's got a gasket that is the right shape. It's just a paper gasket. So we will, I guess, use that one. So it should be pretty straightforward. Paper gasket on the back. It's basically just a blind. So that's this one. Okay. So let's set our new carburetor up here so it doesn't get dirty. So here's the back of the carburetor. The old gasket. Here's the new replacement gasket. You see the little hole right there. So this will go on the back of our carburetor, which we're going to turn the carburetor around 180 degrees to put it on. So I'm just going to flip this gasket around right now 180 degrees and go ahead and slide it on the studs there. Oh, our fuel plug is starting to drip. Okay, now we'll get our new carburetor. Forward versus backwards. Start to slide it on, and as it begins to slide on, we'll go ahead and hook these linkages back up once we can. So again, that one's just a straight linkage. Now it wants me to, there you go, just got to kind of wiggle it down in there. And then our wire keeper spring here, which is somehow easier to hook up than it is to unhook. Our fuel line, so we'll go ahead and slide that back. We'll turn our fuel valve off, and I'm going to go ahead and put this fuel line back on the carburetor. I don't see why I can't, so we'll slide our snap ring down there. We'll pinch the hose like we did putting it on, and try to pull our plug out. Goodness gracious, there we go. And then we'll just turn this over, and down she goes. Much easier to get that hose on and off without that big plastic shield on. So we'll go ahead and do it now. Alright, now our front gasket is this one here. And I don't remember how it was on. Carburetor was mounted like this. let me see. I'm actually going to back up to the video here and see, just because, I mean, you could presume that it's supposed to go like that and let access into that port, but I don't want to presume and put it on backwards, because these gaskets are really sensitive. They're not meant to be put on and off. Alright, so video was handy. So yeah, this is the proper way to put it on. So we slide our gasket back on here. Our fuel line's already hooked up. And yeah, that's it. So the new kit came with, like I said, a new hose, and it came with a new throttle linkage that I don't need. Oh yes I do. I don't need the hose, but I'm definitely going to need the throttle linkage because it's not on the old carburetor. It came off with the old carburetor. Oh, darn it. And that means I've got to... Now why would they do that? Just to ship it that way? Oh, it just sits in. It just sits right in there like that. Why they wouldn't... Yeah. I guess because it can come apart so easily, they just ship it not together. Okay, so our new throttle linkage is on, or our throttle lever is on. This thing is pretty nasty. There's, see all this? Looking down in there, you can see all the fibers from the paper. I'm gonna clean all that out of there and try to wipe this out really good with a paper towel, and then we'll put it back on once we get it good and clean. Alright, so I just took a water hose to it. Seems rather counterintuitive to spray water in a carburetor intake, but it's not in the carburetor itself. Took a water hose to it, dried it out as best I could, because that old paper filter had, like I said, it got wet and it imploded, and then it was stuck all down the little cracks and crevices of the thing. So I didn't want to put it back on there with that paper, you know, still in it, and have it just plug up a new carburetor. So you just slide that on until it's snug. It should be. Put your nuts back on, and that should be it.
Can you clean the sheets and everything else?
Oh, I guess so. Sounds like my little girl wet the bed. We've been trying to potty train, but that should be it. So that's the choke lever, and I can feel it functioning inside the carburetor. There's our fuel on and off. So we can just real quick, here's how we can check if our fuel's working, right? There's the carburetor drain plug. We'll turn our fuel on. There she goes. Turn our fuel off. Zip our plug back in here. Be very careful with that. There's a little aluminum bowl there. That should be it. I'm going to go rob the air filter out of the other pump, just because I don't have a replacement filter for this one yet. So I'm going to go pull the other air filter out of the other pump to put on this one, and then we'll start it up, give it a whirl. Alright. Had to run the other water pump for a little while, get a hole pumped out that it was sitting on anyway, before I stole its air filter. So we'll look inside this air filter. It has not cratered yet. I say yet. If I could find one that didn't have paper on the inside, it might be a good grab. That doesn't go on there yet, by the way. I'm using my filter bin over here as a parts bin. Oops. Put that back on there so I don't lose it. These little Phillips head screws, I'd put them back in there just so I didn't lose them. So this air breather housing goes back on, and notice there's a little tube on the bottom that goes right here on this vent, I guess it is. Of course, that's in my way. I thought it slipped off over it, but nope. So as you're setting down on there, just make sure that you get your tube hooked back up where it belongs. And you may have to finagle that hose back and forth a little bit. It may have been easier to put that hose on before I put the plastic shield back on, but that's easy enough. So that hose is hooked up. This should set down kind of like it knows its place and it's not wanting to. There it goes. Okay. Starting to get nervous. Okay. Put our two little plastic, our coarse thread screws back in here. Now we drop our air filter on. Make sure that's down. Tighten the wing nut down. Filter cover snaps on. And you can actually almost, shove that hose back on despite the little keeping clip on it. Okay, let's put it back together. Let's set it down here on the ground and see if we can start it. Now I don't have it in the cage, but I'm hoping I can get it fired up just enough to show that it's running. And I'll just hold my hand on top of the pump or something to stabilize it. Alright, it's cold open. Choke, switch on, gas is on, throttle down. Oh, that's interesting. That was wanting to run. Not wanting to stay running though. Just wanting to run choke only. Now I might have flooded it. Let me get that spark plug out and take a look at it because it was giving me fits before. It needs a new spark plug anyway. It tried to fire. Spark plug was fine, not flooded. I noticed that my fuel was actually turned off and not on, which I would have thought it would have run a little bit longer than that if the fuel was off, but who knows. Maybe the carb bowl wasn't quite filled up earlier when we tested it. Switch on, choke on, throttle on. How about that? All right. Seems to be running. Yeah, air compressor kicked on right there at the end, but I just went ahead and cut it off. I didn't want to leave it running too long, skipping around on my on my concrete. I don't see anything real obvious. I see little bits of maybe some fiber, maybe some paper fiber down in that hole, but you know, these carbs, they're so sensitive. They're so cheap and available, but they're so sensitive. So we're gonna get the pump thrown back in the cage here and go get it set up on the pond. Get it pumping. Running hard. Got it back and going.